Well, I appreciate that Ken knows how much we do look forward to those finance updates. So much. No, actually, folks, please know that every gift you make here makes a huge difference. And we couldn't do the work that God calls us to do without that. So thank you so much. And thank you, Ken and finance team, for all your hard work on getting us on the right track with all that. We appreciate it. But folks, I'm excited about this Invest series that we're doing. And we're doing something brand new that we've never done before, which is each week during the series, part of the message will be an interview time where someone in the congregation will join me up here and we'll have a conversation about the topic. And so in just a little bit, Tricia Passage will join me up here for some conversation. But I want to get us started on the theme and understanding what this is all about. And in this Invest series, we're being challenged to think about how is God calling us to invest more deeply in our relationship with God, our relationships with others, the mission that God's given us in this church, and in a bigger way, how God is calling us to be followers of Jesus, to be the body of Christ. How is God calling us into this community? And so how are we being called to invest? I also shared with you last week as we talked about this series that the word invest has to do with putting something in now so that in the future there will be some dividends. There will be something that will come out of that. And what we talked about was the really important things in life aren't things that happen overnight. They take our intentionality, our investment. We have to put time and energy into those things that matter most. Things like our marriages, our relationships with our kids, our relationship with God. Those things that are most important to us don't just happen overnight, they take investment. So today we're going to talk about investing in mission, and that is inviting others, helping other people to know this good news of Jesus Christ, this good news about how God is at work in our lives and what God calls us into. And so I want to begin with a reading from Matthew chapter 4, and this is where Jesus calls the first disciples. So verse 18, one day, as Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, also called Peter, and Andrew, throwing a net into the water, for they fished for a living. Jesus called out to them, "Come, follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people." And they left their nets at once and followed him. And Jesus traveled throughout the region of Galilee, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. And news about him spread as far as Syria. And people soon began bringing to him all who were sick. And whatever their sickness or disease, or if they were demon-possessed or epileptic or paralyzed, he healed them. He healed them all. So let's start here this morning. So we have this story. Jesus comes to the disciples, or he finds his first disciples. He says, "Come and follow me. Come and follow me." This invitation to follow after him. And what we've said all along here is that to be a disciple of Jesus, to be a believer, is to be a follower. We follow Jesus. And part of following is learning to be like him, learning to live our lives as if Jesus were living our lives. We are following Jesus, learning to think like him, be like him, act like him. We want to be Jesus in the world. And so Jesus came to these first disciples and he said, "Come, follow me." And they spent the next 3 years following Jesus as he led his ministry. And they were taught by him every single day, and they got to witness all the things that he did, so that by the end of Jesus' time, when he was crucified and died and then was risen, it was time for them to take his mission, that mission, and own it for themselves. And it was now their job to live that out. But it begins with this invitation to follow. And friends, this is the invitation that Jesus gives to all of us, to follow him. But one thing that seems really interesting about this, to these fishermen, he says, "Follow me and I'll show you how to fish for people." Now, the way I understand this is Jesus takes us where we're at. He meets us where we are. And then he says, "Let me show you the gifts that you have, how you can use those things for my purposes, according to my will. You're great at fishing? Well, I'm going to show you how to fish for people." And that's what Jesus does to us. He comes to us where we're at. I mean, these guys, they didn't have any formal training. Fishermen in that society were pretty close to the bottom of the barrel. Jesus didn't walk around picking out the superstars to be his future proteges. He went to the fishermen. He said, "Hey guys, come follow me. I'm going to show you how to fish for people." And that's what Jesus does in our life. Each and every one of us, wherever we're at, he comes to us. He says, "Now, let me show you how to use all the gifts I've given you. Let me show you how to use them the way I intend you to use them for my purposes." And so these disciples follow him. They're trained up. And then what do they see Jesus doing? Proclaiming the good news about the kingdom. Now, that includes a lot of things, but I think most importantly, the good news of the kingdom is that God claims us, God saves us, God forgives us, and also God sends us into the world. We're claimed, we're saved, we're forgiven, we're loved, and then we're sent out. This good news about the kingdom is exactly what we talk about here when we're talking about shining our light. It's recognizing that you and I have our brokenness in our lives that we need God to heal. But more so than that, there's a community full of brokenness around us. There are broken homes. There are people struggling with addictions. There are people who are struggling in their grief. There are people recovering from a terrible flood. There are over and over and over again, there's brokenness in our community. And God's hope is that everyone would know this good news and could find hope, healing, forgiveness, love, all of those things. And how do they find them? Well, when we share them. And so that's what Jesus does in the next passage in 28. He gives the disciples the Great Commission. So follow along with me there. It says, "Then the 11 disciples left for Galilee, going to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. And when they saw him, they worshiped him. But some of them doubted. Jesus came and told his disciples, 'I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I've given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, always.'" Now, you've probably heard that Great Commission before. What I love is the piece right before it and the piece right after it. The piece right before it is this phrase, "and some of them doubted." Did you notice that? So here's the disciples who Jesus has been training for 3 years, and some of them doubted. But Jesus didn't say, "I give this mission to those of you who don't doubt, the rest of you just away with you," right? He gave the mission to all of them. Once again, Jesus takes us where we're at and says, "Here, now go and do this work. Even if you're doubting, even if you're struggling in your faith, I've called you and I've claimed you and I'm sending you to do my work." And so he tells them, "Go out and make disciples of all nations." In other words, help people to know what it means to follow me, to live the life I want for them. And then he gives them this incredible promise. "And remember, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." Which is this really important promise for us, friends, that no matter what we go through, no matter where we go, and as we think about this idea of investing in mission, God gives us words to reach others. God gives us courage to talk about our faith, to talk about our faith community. Jesus promises to be with us always, even when we doubt, even if the only thing we think we're good at is fishing, or whatever that thing is for you. God says, "You're mine, and I'm going to work in your life." So, one of those people that God has chosen is Tricia Passage. And so I'm going to ask Tricia to come on up here, and we're going to have a little conversation today. So thank you, Tricia. Ben's grabbing it. I'll sit you up here. Well, Tricia, I asked you to consider sharing with us today because from my perspective, you're one of those people that just kind of naturally does this. You invite people and you welcome them and you help them to know what God's good news is all about. And I'm assuming that hasn't always been easy for you, but we want to hear about that today. So first of all, give us a little introduction. How long have you been connected with this faith community? What's the background there?
Sure. Hi, good morning, everybody. So I have worshiped here as long as I can remember. I was baptized in Cross Plains, but my parents shortly after started worshiping here, and so I grew up in this church. So that's been fun. I since have been on Vision Team for several years. I currently teach a class at Family Faith Night. I lead a Bible study on Tuesday nights. So yeah, God's been working through me. So.
Very good. Very good. Well, what are some ways that you've invested in mission by inviting others to new heights? What does that look like for you?
So first of all, I just want to start off by saying what I'm sharing with you today is not what I always do. It's what I try to do. It's what I strive for, but sometimes I fall short. So what I'm sharing today is just times when I have kind of gotten it right. So, we're all in this together. So,
Love it.
oh yeah. So I forgot the question, but
That's
I'm
all
back
right.
on it. Okay. So, first of all, I try to listen to Christian music as much as I can. Because it keeps God at the front of my mind. So on my way to my new job, I listen to it in the morning, and it really helps me to keep God on my mind all day. And so I'm able, when those openings arise, I can, easily incorporate an invitation because it's already on my mind. So, and I'm excited about what's going on here. So it's easy for me then to say, hey, you should come. So.
I think that's one of those challenges for all of us, isn't it? How we live out our faith every day and every moment, how we keep God at the forefront of our brains. And of course, we're not always, let's say, in that mode, but this bigger picture of hoping that God will work through us each and every day and finding ways that we can get ourselves just paying attention to God and listening for the Spirit is so important. So thank you for that example. Would you mind telling us about a time that God worked through you to bring someone to new heights?
Yeah, so my older daughter has a friend, and her family was going through a time of crisis, and God really laid it on my heart that I should invite her to Family Faith Night. She was in 5th grade then, so I was her teacher. And so it was, I said, maybe I was thinking they should come, but I was really apprehensive about the invitation. I was kind of worried I didn't know much about their, faith background, or if they went to church somewhere else, or, all of those things kind of stopped me from making the invitation. And then my husband pointed out, if, talking with him, if you feel like you should do it, then you should do it. So I did, and I said, okay, would you like to come to Family Faith Night? I'll be your teacher, we can talk to your mom. And she said, yeah. And so I started picking her up every Wednesday night and bringing her. And so this year now they're in confirmation, and she comes with her mom. So that's been really fun to grow with them and to watch God do his thing. So
Cool. That's actually one of the ways that we see a lot of families come here. It starts with the children. The children are invited by a friend. They're invited to come on Family Faith Night or to youth group, and pretty soon other family members are coming with them. So very cool. But I also love, Tricia, that you took it upon yourself to bring her, to give her a ride. And I think sometimes this investing in mission means that we even go a step beyond just mentioning it or inviting, but say, can I go with you, or can I bring you, or can I meet you there?
Can I add something to that, too? And that was kind of the part that Tim pushed me on. It's because we have 4 kids, and it's, I was working at home then, and so to leave to do extra things on top of the stuff I was already doing, it was like, that's too much for me. But it ended up not being too much for me, so it actually enriched the time that I had. Those conversations in the car kind of made me grow more, too, so.
Cool. Well, a little bit of what I heard there is that you've needed some help along the way. Tim had to give you a little nudge. But talk about some of the ways that it is hard for you to invite people. Talk about that.
Yeah, so oftentimes I get in my own head. I'm worried about what people think. I'm worried about what I know, what I don't know, questions that they're going to ask that I might not have the answer to. All of these little things that hinder me from being who God intends me to be.
Yeah, okay. So how do you overcome that? And are there ways that this is easy for you?
So when I get out of my head and think about, this is not about me. It's not about me at all. It's about God. And if I make the ask, God will move, and even if I'm uncomfortable with making the ask, it's just being pumped up and on fire about our church and the things we're doing here. And oftentimes just talking about that, people are like, where do you go to church? And then that opens the door. So, just having that at the forefront again just makes it a lot easier for me to have those conversations.
Cool. I think that's an important piece of this, that first of all, nobody is asking anyone to cold call. And no one's asking anyone to have an awkward conversation with a friend. But rather, when your faith is vitally important to your life, you naturally share that with others. It reminds me of a story, one of our teenagers, actually. had a soccer tournament, and on Saturday they did really well, and so they were going to have to play on Sunday morning. And so the coach is telling them this on Saturday after they won their last game on Saturday, and she said, "I won't be here tomorrow." And the coach is like, "What do you mean you won't be here?" "Well, I have church tomorrow." And he looked at her like, "I've never had a teenager really have that problem with having to miss church for a soccer game." And she said, "Well, you don't know my church." And not in a in your face kind of way, but a way of like, "You don't know how much I enjoy my church. It means a lot to me." And that was just coming out of her. And, I see that in you too, Tricia. Would you tell us about a time where you were surprised to find yourself inviting someone or sharing?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned already, I started a new job recently, and I went into this job thinking, sometimes I can be kind of loud, and I try to be funny, and I'm not always funny. And so I thought I can just be who I want to be, and I can tone it down a little and play it cool, like this. Nobody knows me, which is unusual situation for me. And so just to go in there and just like play it cool. And so that's what I was going to do. And that lasted for about 3 days. And I came back from lunch one day, and so the two younger 24-year-olds that I work with were talking about unconditional love. And I walked in, set my lunch bag down, and they were like, "Do you believe in unconditional love?" Oh, let me stop there because I forgot a part of the story.
Oh, okay. All right.
So in thinking about this question and reflecting on it, then I realized that by playing it cool and playing it safe, I was kind of putting the basket on my light, right? And I didn't realize it at the time. And so when they asked me, "Do you believe in unconditional love?" Like, yes. And I have some things to say about it. So I kind of went off on a bit of a tangent, I think I'd call it. And they were like, "Whoa." And I said, "You guys should come to church." And one of the girl was like, "Oh, I think I could." And the man was like, "Nope." And I said, "Well, if you ever want to talk about that, you just let me know, but I'm going to keep at you." And he was like, "Okay." So I'm still just kind of waiting to see how God uses that, but that was the example I thought of. So.
Well, I appreciate that, because we all are in situations where we think, well, I can't talk about my faith here, or I would never mention my church to these people or in this setting, and we have different reasons for that. But sometimes we need a little nudge from God to say, "Oh, sorry, I'm not letting you off the hook," right? And there you are. So I'm wondering, an important part of this is as we step out in faith, as we make invitations, as we talk about God's work in our life, it impacts who we are. We actually grow in our faith as we do that. And I got two pieces of this question. So in addition to inviting, another important piece of this investing in mission is how we welcome people, how we share God's love with people, how we help them become a part of this faith family. And that's something I also see that you do really well. And so I'm just wondering for you, Tricia, both investing in mission, both in inviting and also in welcoming, how has that impacted your own faith?
So it's kind of stemmed from and both caused me to go deeper in my faith. It's given me this incredible faith family. And I think about it when I serve communion, like people approach and I'm like, "Oh, I love them. Oh, I love that person. Oh, look at you. Oh," and I'm so excited. I'm like, "Oh, like I love you guys." And it's like we're family. And it's unique and it's special. And having people to rely on and getting to know your children and things like that. It's those types of things. Not that your messages aren't moving, but those types of things.
Hey, it's a both and, right? It's a both and, yeah.
Really help me grow. And so when I can be a part of that and somebody shows up that I've invited and it's like, "Oh," and then I introduce them to my friends and my family that's here and, I weave them in. It's really, I grow myself.
Yeah, very cool. Well, let me say to everyone, we know that one of the primary reason that most people first come here is because they've been invited. Someone else has talked about New Heights or invited them. Not everyone, but the vast majority of people who come have been invited. It's such a crucial part of how we are faith community. We invite, we welcome, we tell folks about what God's doing. That's who we are and who we need to be. But how about, what words of wisdom or advice do you have for us as you have tried to live this out yourself? Would you share with us?
Just to reiterate that, like, the church family we have going on here, I believe is what God wants for everybody. And, this is where it starts, and it's a ripple effect, and it changes lives. It's changing people, and it's pretty incredible. And so when I think of inviting people, I want that for that person that that I'm inviting. Like, I want this for you. But it doesn't have to be a formal ask. Like I said before, just talking about your church and talking about your faith or mentioning something that you're doing, it sparks interest in people. And it can be life-changing. And so I really feel like God calls all of us to just be mindful and aware of who you're talking to when the door opens, just to go for it. So
Great. Tricia, thank you so much. How about a round of applause? Well, I don't know about you, but I felt like Tricia had a lot of just really cool pieces to share there. And I want to reiterate where we started with this today, is to say that, first of all, Jesus comes to us where we are, and he welcomes us in. But then he sends us out. And we have a broken world, a broken community, and we are called to not only be God's light, but we are called to share this good news and to welcome and invite other folks. And so I just want to encourage you to continue to think about that in everyday life. And, think about, who is God nudging you to reach out to? That might be in a formal way. It might be in an informal way. But again, we don't go knocking on doors. We don't do massive ad blitzes in the community. We don't try to recruit people that are actively worshiping in other places. The church grows as the people of God share their faith because they're excited about how God is at work in them. And so I just want to remind you that we're so glad you're here, but God's not done with us yet. God's heart is not only that you're here, but that so many others can be a part of what God is doing. And so let's keep asking. Let's keep investing in mission. And not only asking, but as we are in this place, remember that we're always on mission. We welcome everyone who comes through the doors. Take the time to get to know people you don't know. Take the time to invite them into Bible studies you're a part of or ministries that you've found life-giving. It's important that we keep making that way for other people to know God and enjoy this gift that we've been given. Well, as we move into a minute of reflection time, would you talk with God about that? Is there anybody that God's putting on your heart? A nudge that God's saying, I'd like you to, invite this person. Or share with them what's happening in your life. Or maybe it's just a nudge to start praying for them. But just take some time in prayer for that, okay?